yay, man. All out of options, nothing to choose. I pissed out on Netflix, I'm sick of the news. I'd sign up to Sky, but I don't wanna pay. I've been on furlough since May. Never go and listen to a Cockney attitude. Ooh, breaking away. Got to find a better way. I'd rather watch Auf Wiedersehen again and listen to what these old men have to say.
Hello, and guten Tag, and welcome to episode 7 of Auf Wiedersehen Again. And it's me, your host, Andy Sledge, and my partner in crime and co-host, Mr. George Bradley. George, how the devil are you today?
Not too bad.
You got your new, is that your new purchase from 80s Casual Classics?
Yeah. I must be a gold member on there by now, I think. I'll tell you.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah, me too, man. I've spunked a load of dough on there this lockdown. However, I've got a fantastic array of quality 80s style clobber.
Same here.
Oh, yeah. So how, apart from your new purchases, how's life in London at the moment?
Oh, yeah. Pretty boring.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's, you know, I'm assuming that our listeners are in exactly the same boat, so they're not going to be too frustrated with the fact that we don't really have a lot to talk about in this particular section of the show. It's like, what have you been doing? Well, I've been getting up,
looking out the window,
watching the telly, I've been eating food, and I've been going back to bed. Like, oh, right, very exciting life.
And then repeating it the next day.
Exactly. So, hold on. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. There we go. Right, I'm going to cover my thing. So, here we are. Episode 7. We're over halfway, George.
Woo!
So, look, this is absolutely fantastic. And, but before we delve into the episode, like I said, so just want to, if anybody has got a little bit of an issue with last week's recording, it is because I say we, that's the royal we, had a little bit of an issue with our editing software. So I have been using a software package called DaVinci, and for some reason it kept on crashing on me last week. So I was editing the episode, and then I'd get like halfway through and I'd done like an hour's worth of work on it, and it would crash and I'd lose all my work. And to say I was frustrated would
You're effing and blinding at your screen, were you?
Oh, fuck me. Yeah, it was ridiculous. So to say I was frustrated would be an understatement. So I had to resort back to iMovie, and iMovie is just not as good. So hopefully, I've actually downloaded another editing software package under the recommendation of a friend of mine, Ben. And
I've seen that message you sent.
Yeah. So hopefully next week we will be back to higher quality video and audio. So apologies for last week. Oh, and we actually have the winner of our Pat Roach book competition. So hold on one second. It was so we selected a winner at random, and okay, right there, I've got the information up there. Hold on, we'll come back to that in a second. We'll do a big proper announcement. Right, sorry, I needed to get that information up on the screen of my phone. Okay, so as always, George and I welcome feedback and abuse of all descriptions. And you can do this by emailing the podcast on Auf Wiedersehen Again @gmail.com. So please do send us emails on Auf Wiedersehen Again @gmail.com. Please follow us on all forms of social media. Our Instagram is @Auf Wiedersehen Again Podcast. That's Instagram Auf Wiedersehen Again Podcast. Twitter is at Auf Again. So that's Twitter at Auf Again. Our Facebook page, if you could like the Facebook page, follow it, and also share it among your friends. The Facebook page is Auf Wiedersehen Again Podcast. And our YouTube, if you're watching on YouTube, then please do go to the subscribe button and click subscribe. And please do click that bell, and then you'll be alerted to any new episodes. And, right, look at that. Tell you what, you may notice a slight pause in the recording there. I'm going to try and edit that out. But I forgot to make the episode of last week live. So we are recording this episode on Good Friday. So we try and record at least a week in advance to make sure that we've got them in the can. Anyway, so there was talking about YouTube that reminded me that I needed to make the YouTube episode. So, so YouTube is, the YouTube channel is, please do search on YouTube, Auf Wiedersehen Again Podcast. And if you would, like I say, please do subscribe to the channel and please click that bell, and that will make you alert to any new episodes on a weekly basis. So if you are just listening on audio in the car, we are available on all audio platforms, all good podcast platforms, Spotify, iTunes, and Google Podcast Breaker, and many, many more. But if you are just listening on audio, please do go to the YouTube channel anyway in your, not when you're driving, obviously, but at some point. And please do subscribe to the YouTube channel and click that bell. New episodes are released every Friday at 10 a.m. And like I say, if you could just please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and that would really help us out. And as always, our theme music is composed and performed by Lee Dosky, the guitar man. And as always, we are sponsored by Top Gun Tattooing. Top Gun Tattooing is based in the number 12, the Harris Arcade in Reading. And their website is topguntattoo.co.uk. And their phone number is 01189 968 667. And we have a couple of fantastic offers for our readers. We have a 20% discount off any tattoo, and to obtain this 20% discount, you need to speak to Zach, who's one of the tattooists, and you ring Zach up on that phone number, or you go in person to number 12, the Harris Arcade, and you say to Zach, Hadaway and Shite Man. And if you say Zach, Hadaway and Shite Man, you will get a 20% discount off your tattoo. So, drum roll, please, George.
Yeah.
So we have been running the competition, the fantastic giveaway competition over the last few weeks for the Pat Roach biography. It was this fantastic book. And the winner of this fantastic competition is Lynn Wharton. So Lynn Wharton, who according to her Facebook page, lives in a place called Crowland. I don't know where Crowland is, but Lynn Wharton, you are the winner of the Pat Roach book. So what we will be doing is we will be messaging Lynn Wharton, and we will be asking for your address. And if you could then send us the address, and we will post out your fantastic prize. So congratulations, Lynn Wharton, on the winning of the Pat Roach biography. So our next competition is going to be for the Jimmy Neal biography, which I am nearly finished. I'm over 3/4 of the way through, burning through that book. So yes, hopefully by this time next week, I will have finished.
A good read, I'd imagine.
It very much so. So I've just I've got past he's done a couple of seasons of Auf Wiedersehen Pet, and he's just done Spender and Crocodile Shoes, and he's.
Well, what was the thing? Didn't he do something with Madonna? Wasn't he in the?
Well, this is just.
I forgot about that.
Yes,
yeah.
he was in the film of Vita. Don't cry for me, Argentina. Yeah, all of that. So yeah, he hasn't in the book. He hasn't actually been in the film yet, but his agents just come to him and gone, you want to be in a film? And he's like, I read them. So
He's
yeah,
not Che Guevara or someone like that, is he? I think.
yeah. It's obviously it's something to. I've never fucking seen it.
Something to do with revolutions, yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's all. I mean, it's obviously it must be set in Argentina, surely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, in fact, there we go. What I might do is I mean, it does look like a bit of a chick flick. Like, it's not exactly.
Yeah, I've never seen it. Well, exactly. I remember the releasing the music and everything, but yeah.
Yeah. So yes. So anyway, congratulations, Lynn Wharton. And then next week we will be setting off a new competition to win the Jimmy Nail biography, which is called A Northern Soul. Oh, and yes, sorry. And remember, the second offer from Top Gun Tattooing, my God, we're getting everything mixed up today. It is Good Friday, and I have been to do a PT this morning, so I'm a bit tired. But remember the second offer that we do from Top Gun Tattooing, George, is what?
What, to get a Lottie tattoo?
So all of our listeners are entitled to a free, that's right, you heard it correctly, a free tattoo. Terms and conditions apply. The terms and conditions are that if you get a Neville and Lottie tattoo, is that on? I think it's that on. Yeah, if you get a Neville and Lottie tattoo, then you will get it absolutely free. So if you would like to get a free tattoo, all you got to do is email us at aufwiedersehenagain@gmail.com, saying in the subject line free tattoo, and we will take you down to Top Gun Tattooing in number 12, the Harris Arcade in Reading, and we will pay for your Neville and Lottie tattoo, and we will film it and photograph it and make you as famous as the number of followers that we have on our social medias, which is increasing steadily. So yeah, we could be doing very, very well.
You got to supply your own sticking plaster when you go back to the missus.
Yeah, absolutely. So, episode 7. So, Auf Wiedersehen Pet, Series 1, episode 7, Private Lives.
Oh, yeah.
So, written, again, single writing credit by Ian Lafreniere, and first broadcast on the 30th of December, 1983. Oh,
what a good watch. The day before New Year's Eve, before you go out, and you've got that to watch.
Exactly. So there was a lot of external stuff filmed on location. And as always, the what is supposed to be Dusseldorf was actually Hamburg. So all of the external locations were shot in Hamburg. So when you see the streets, etc., that was all in Hamburg. However, apart from one, which we will mention later, which was actually filmed in London. But I'm going to mention that later. So there's
also a big star in her early days, which we'll mention later.
George, you read my mind, young man. You read my mind. Yes, there is the introduction of someone who is very prominent within the UK media world and comedy world. Was making her debut.
And she looked bloody good as well, didn't she?
She did indeed. Yeah. She did indeed. Was a bit of a sort, obviously, in her younger days. Yeah. And obviously, there's the hotel that a lot of this episode takes place in, the Intercontinental Hotel in Hamburg. Did you know that was actually the hotel that all of the cast stayed at?
Yeah. Or the crew stayed at,
Yeah, cast and crew stayed at that hotel throughout the filming of all of the bits in Hamburg. So, again, the episode opens up. We are in the hut, and there's 7 guys living in a hut. I mean, you can imagine the noises, but more importantly, probably the smells. But yeah, there's a lot of. It's Saturday morning. It's early doors. They probably had a few sherbets last night after work.
Oh yeah.
And there's lots of snores. And Wayne is the first to wake up. And him and Neville wake up, and he's like, good morning. And, Neville's like, what time is it? He's like, it's 9 o'clock. And Wayne is full of the joys.
The weekend's his hunting zone, isn't it? Hunting time.
Exactly. Wayne's woken up, and he is ready and raring to go. There's some poor Fraulein somewhere walking the streets of Dusseldorf. It's about to encounter the attitudes of Wayne, the Cockney womanizer. And Wayne's of the attitude that, there's somebody out there doesn't know what they're about to get themselves into. So he says, it's come round again, the weekend. We get to put on some clean gear and join the human race. And, Wayne gets up and starts getting his shit together. And Neville, playing the same old record, Mr. Depression. And he says, I find the weekends the most depressing. And Wayne's like, don't be like that. That's the reason we're here. Again, that's sort of playing the same old record kind of game. But Neville, not me. Weekends are the hardest part. And he looks absolutely sick. And he looks over, and Oz is snoring away like a good one. And Neville pulls the blanket back over his head. Tries to get some more sleep. So Wayne goes to the amenities hut, the Kazi.
The Kazi, yeah.
And he walks into the toilet hut. And Moxie is, once again firmly ensconced within the toilet cubicle, and Wayne's going in to have a shave, etc. And Wayne's like, "Is that you, Moxie?" He's like, "Yes." He goes, "I thought I recognised your elegant footwear," and so Moxie starts defending his choice of footwear. He says, "There's nothing wrong with them; they're very comfortable." And Wayne's like, they're not exactly the height of fashion. And Moxie's like, I like them. And Wayne says, if you're in the toilet cubicle, I'd better make some alternative arrangements. And Moxie's like, I think it's the sauerkraut. Yeah, so Moxie's blaming the sauerkraut on his...
the 10 pints of ale,
Yeah, had nothing to do with getting smashed out your fucking face. But the small amount of sauerkraut that you eat with the meal.
And a bad bag of peanuts.
So Wayne's like, obviously entertaining Moxie's fucking thing. He says it plays havoc with the bloke system. So Moxie then starts telling a joke about an Irish bloke. He's like, do you want to hear the joke? And he starts telling a joke about an Irish bloke. And he's obviously oblivious to the fact that Wayne clearly doesn't give a fuck. And then obviously Wayne's fucking put the shaving foam on his face, realizes he doesn't have his razor, and Wayne goes back to the hut to get his razor, and Moxie doesn't realize that Wayne's not there.
It just carries on.
And he carries talking. And then he's like, do you get it? And then he just, even with no response, and he starts telling another joke. So they're back in the hut. Neville is filling the kettle, and there was a little bit of a goof there. Did you notice that?
No, what was that? No.
So Neville is filling the kettle with water, and next to the sink on the bench there is a tub of margarine.
Oh, is this with English?
Exactly, margarine. It says margarine. It doesn't say margarine or whatever the fucking equivalent is. But basically it's an English tub of margarine, which obviously wouldn't have been there. No one's going to buy a tub of margarine.
Well, unless Barry got it sent over specially. I mean,
but I can't imagine them transporting a tub of margarine from England to Germany. So a bit of a goof there on the props, but never mind. So Wayne comes in to get his razor, and the Bomber. If you notice, Bomber's not in this episode, and obviously the excuse is that Bomber's gone fishing.
That's it. Yeah.
So I think obviously.
Just when he was ill, his health issues.
I don't know. No, I think this was too early. He was. Do you know what? He was probably booked to work on a film or something like that.
Yeah.
So I should go through. It was probably mentioned in the book. I've had that book for ages though, so I don't actually remember. But if Lynn Wharton reads the book, she can send us an email and tell us.
That's it. Yeah.
Barry, Barry's working on his bike. Moxie's on the bog, so don't make any plans. And Neville's like, where's Dennis? And Oz, eagle-eyed Oz, I saw him earlier, he woke me up and he had a rolled up towel. Looked like he was going swimming. And Neville's like, swimming? And he's like, well, he wasn't going sunbathing, not in this crap hole anyway. And Oz is like, any tea on the go? So Neville is inspired. He's like, whoa, Oz.
He's had a light bulb moment, I think.
Yeah. He's like, what a great idea. And then he says something that's proper Geordie. He says, let's go to the baths.
That's what I was going to ask you. Is it? Yeah, you don't call it the pool, obviously.
No, but that's, again, I was actually going to ask you the same thing. I was going to say, like, when you were a kid and you got to the swimming pool with your mate.
Every Friday, lunchtime.
Yeah, what did you call it? Like,
no.
You just
I went to school in Marylebone in London, you see, so we're off to the swimming pool. It's very, very posh.
Oh, right. No, like, see, that's a proper Geordie word. That we'll go into the baths. We'll go into the baths. So that's that, because I used to I remember in the summer holidays we used to go to Gosforth swimming pool. Yeah, me and my sister, and it was like every day, like, because it was fuck all. You used to, like, it was like 10 pence or something like that. I mean, it was like, you know, it was so cheap and easily affordable. And it was like, you know, it would be, you know, you'd be out the house for 5 hours. You know, your mother, you know, would get up in the morning. My mother would give me and my sister like 20 pence each. 10 pence to get in the baths, and 10 pence for a drink or a bag of sweets or whatever. And walk from the house down to the swimming pool. And like, you pay your money to go in and you get, like, you know, a 3-hour time slot or whatever. And then you're in the swimming pool for like 3 hours. And then it's a walk home as well. So yeah, you know, it would be like, you know, during the summer holidays, my mother would be like, right, there's 20 pence each, fuck off and don't come back for 5 hours. So, but yeah, we used to love it. There was like a big diving board and everything. It used to be called the High Man. This was at Gosforth Swimming. For any of our listeners who were based in the Gosforth region, if you remember the High Man, please do email us or comment on the Facebook page. But yeah, and there used to be like, there were only allowed 4 people up on the High Man, and it was always like if there was more than 4 people, they'd start announcing it, 4 only on the High Man.
I never had enough nerve to hit the diving boards. I was a bit of a.
Oh, I fucking swim like I was in the dolphins and everything. I would swim like a fish.
Oh no.
So yeah, I was diving off the diving board when I was 7 years old. You know what I mean?
King of the baths.
Yeah. Anyway, so like I say, Neville is inspired. Let's go into the baths. And Oz is like, what for? He's like, well, you know, it's a bit of a change, a bit of exercise and something.
Doesn't involve drinking.
Right? So, and then like Oz, this is like Oz sits up on his bed, and this is the first time you really get a good view of Oz's undergarments.
Oh, yeah.
Oz has got his Y fronts and his vest on, and he blows his nose on his vest. And I mean, it's all stained brown and fucking, I mean, like, I'd love to know how long he was potentially thinking. And he says, and he goes, oh, I've got to go and get me washing. I'm like, you're fucking washing? You clearly don't do washing. Anyway, and Neville says, all right, well, after that, we'll go into the baths. And I was like, I haven't got a cosy. He's like, we're stopping by someone. And then Oz stands and watches the kettle. You know, he's like, oh. And you know, what they say is a watch pot never boils. So they cut back to the toilet hut, and Moxie is still telling his second joke or third, whatever. Yeah. And Wayne comes back in and starts having a shave. Moxie flushes the toilet and comes out the toilet finishing his joke. And Wayne just, you know, entertains him. Very witty, Moxie, very droll. And Moxie said, I preferred the first one myself. So anyway, they cut back to the hut, and Neville and Oz are having a chat about, and he says, you know, it's funny how Dennis never said he was going out. And Oz is like, oh, he's a cagey lad, Dennis, likes to play it close to his chest. Mm. And Neville noticed, he said, he's been even worse lately. You know, he says he was going out on Thursday, asked where he was off to, and he told us to mind my own business. So obviously Dennis has started to see Dagmar.
Yeah.
And they've clearly been spending a lot of time together, and Dennis is trying to keep it to himself. And Oz makes the wrong assumption, says he's still fretting about his divorce. Neville's like, no, it wasn't that. He wasn't moody. In fact, he was quite chipper. That's why I was quite taken aback. So Dennis is obviously in a good mood. He's off to see Dagmar. Neville's questioned him, and Dennis has been a bit abrupt with him. And then Oz is like, oh, he's really never been one of the lads. Now, do you see, so Oz comes back with a cup of tea, and I think he's got a tin of beans or whatever. Do you see what he puts in his tea?
No, I missed that one.
There's a can of evaporated milk.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if you ever had evaporated milk before, George?
Yeah, when I was younger, yeah.
Well, it was my opa, my granddad. He was in the merchant navy.
Yeah.
And obviously, this was, many, long before they could, whatever, so he's on a big ship going around the world.
Yeah.
I'm sure that the technology of freezing and milk and fresh milk and whatever was far inferior.
It was probably in his rations, wasn't it? His rations.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
So he on ship they had evaporated milk, tins of evaporated milk that they used to put in their tea and coffee. And so even when he left the merchant navy, just out of habit, he would, and out of preference of taste, because I think it's very sweet, isn't it, evaporated milk?
Yeah.
So my opa would put evaporated milk in his tea and coffee, and we used to call it as kids. I don't know why we used to call it shaky milk, and we'd be like you're putting your shaky milk in your coffee or whatever. So it was when obviously they keeping milk in the hut, they probably haven't got a fridge, so they're using evaporated milk because it doesn't need to be refrigerated. So he puts evaporated milk into his tea and he starts eating a tin of beans. And Oz says about Dennis, he says he's too straight-laced. And then Neville obviously, talks about a conversation he had. He says he wants to get his own place. He says if he's going to stay in Germany, he's going to get a flat because he doesn't like the hut anymore. And it's one of the best lines. So Oz is stood there in the most filthy, disgusting underwear, covered in snots and shit. He's put evaporated milk into his tea, and he's eating a tin of beans straight out the tin. And he looks and he stood up and he looks around like that. And he just says, what's wrong with this place? As if he's staying in the Ritz. This is the Ritz.
Yeah. That was good line, that one.
What's wrong with this place? It's fucking brilliant. And anyway, so they cut outside. Barry's working on his bike. Oz and Neville, towel under their arm. They're obviously off to the swimming baths. Wayne drying his hair with the pink hair with me mother's pink hair dryer. So Barry asks, where's the lads gone? Wayne's like, they're going swimming. Can you believe it? Barry's like, that's a good idea. And Wayne's like, why? He's like, well, it's exercise. Wayne says it's madness. Barry says, no, it's not. And Moxie chimes in that Neville's into all these health things. And Wayne says he tried to get me to go jogging the other week. No way, I told him. And he goes, I told him what happened to my brother-in-law. Well, he's into all that running, weights, callous bleeding, Thenix. Bear in mind, he's a bit of a nutter. He must be. He married my sister. And Barry's like, well, I don't know your sister. Anyway, Wayne's like, well, you're well out of it. Obviously, he doesn't have a very high opinion of his own sister. He says he goes jogging every weekend. He's got all the gear, the Adidas tracksuit and the headband. And I said, you'll do yourself an injury, you will. And he goes, but I was right. But how do you mean? He was trying to jog across a red light at Catford roundabout.
Juggernaut.
And he got hit by a juggernaut. He goes, laugh. He goes, and then he bought me own beer. So Wayne taking great pleasure at the tragedy of a relative, obviously a brother-in-law. Anyway, so Barry's like, I don't think that's a good enough reason for denigrating exercise. And so I don't know what Barry's doing. Barry's like rubbing some cream on his face. He's obviously trying to, worried about spots or whatever. And Wayne just says, look, there's a lesson to be learned. If God wanted us to go jogging, we'd have been born wearing
plimsolls.
Plimsolls, that's a proper fucking...
Oh, yeah.
You don't get people saying the word plimsolls these days, do you?
No.
So, Moxie's like, it's as good a hobby as any. Everyone needs a hobby, especially here. There's not all else to do. And Wayne says, I've got a hobby which I pursue with great diligence and dedication. What's that? Skirt.
Yeah, it says it all.
Skirt. Barry's like, skirt? He goes, I think of hobbies as making model aeroplanes or collecting butterflies or beer mats, things like that. And Wayne puts him in his place. He goes, that's because you're a bit of a radish. And anyway, but now Barry's, you know, Barry, when Tracy, a few weeks ago, when Tracy was there and Tracy called him a radish, he was like, oh yeah, that's, you know, he's quite happy to accept the moniker. But now he's sort of, he's real, I think or whether he's realized that it's not maybe the term of endearment that it was. Barry's like, I'm not a radish. And he goes, well, you don't show much inclination to jump the opposite sex, do you? Neither of you. And Moxie's defense, it's not because I lack the inclination, because I was badly let down by a girl from Runcorn. And he's like, well, you can't get much. You can't get out much. You spend half your time that's what he says. You spend half your time insulting the porcelain. Again, you know, taking the piss out of Moxie's toilet habits. And so Barry's still with the cream on his face. He's like, I think you're right, Wayne. My education does lack a thing or two in that direction. And he says, do you think you could give us one or two tips? So like Wayne's like, what? Like looks at him like he's absolutely mental. But then Wayne sees an opportunity to save a bit of money. And he says, I tell you what, if you give us a lift into town, you're on. And Barry's well happy now. He's like, Barry's usual word, bust in. So Wayne's getting himself a free lift into town. And Barry is about to get himself an education, or so he thinks. So Wayne and Barry get on the bike, and Barry recommends that Wayne puts a helmet on, and he says you should wear something on your head. And Wayne, again, very, very demeaning to Barry, and he says, "What, and look like you?" And he says, "You can be really rude, Wayne." And he says, "Well, that helmet isn't going to help your chances." Obviously, with the ladies. Anyway, so Wayne looks over, and Dagmar is on the site Saturday morning. She's locking up the hut.
Yeah.
And Dagmar is looking pretty tasty by all accounts.
Yeah.
And Wayne's like, I've never noticed her before. And Barry says, keeps herself to herself. And Wayne's like, head her off. Head her off. And Barry's like, ooh, lesson one. So the bike pulls up. And Wayne tries to give Dagmar a few, get Dagmar chatting. And he says, you're
doing a bit of overtime,
yeah, putting in a bit of overtime. You don't normally work. And she says she's been doing the accounts. And then Wayne, the usual, you're not spending the time with your boyfriend. I mean, you have got a boyfriend, haven't you? Trying to find out what her domestic situation is. And she smiles. I mean, obviously she knows what he's up to. And she's got a bit of a smile, and she goes, perhaps. And he says, oh, well, only perhaps, there's still a chance. And she puts him in his place. She turns around and she goes, if I were you, I would not live in home. Just told Wayne to fuck off. And Barry laughs. And Wayne is... Wayne's a bit embarrassed, and he's like, what's so funny? Let's go. Anyway, so Dagmar, you cut to Dagmar. She's driving down the street. Like I say, that street is in Hamburg, not in Dusseldorf. Dennis is sitting outside the sitting outside the pub, reading the paper. Got a copy of The Sun, and Dagmar pulls up in her Volkswagen. I think it's a Golf. Golf. And Den gets in the car, and she says, oh, you've been shopping. Den's got, he says, I've got new socks, shirt, dry cleaning. I'm like a housewife doing the Saturday morning shopping. And then Dagmar says, do you make food in your quarters? And he's like,
quarters, yeah.
Quarters is more like barracks, but we do cook, but it's not haute cuisine. And she goes, it must be fun. He goes, well, I find it pathetic. Living in a wooden hut at my age with a bunch of lunatics. And she says, I just talked to 2 of them. And he's like, that pricks his ears up. He's like, oh yeah. And she goes, I think I was being picked up. And Den's like, it wouldn't surprise me. God knows what they would say if they knew I was with you. And then Dagmar says, you're not going to tell anyone? And he says, certainly not. Unlike that lot, I keep things to myself. And you and me should be a carefully guarded secret, especially as you work on the site. And Dagmar says, you are ashamed of me. I mean, it's obviously a bit of a joke. And Den turns around and goes, right. So, they're having a laugh. But, they're clearly, in the very early stages of what, it seems like they're, about to enter into a very nice relationship. They're both very keen on each other, smiling, and, they both want to spend a lot of time. And obviously, if Den was out with her on Thursday, and then he got up early Saturday, they're spending quite a lot of time together after so the previous week when, she was like, oh, you can take me out for dinner. They're jumping into this relationship with both feet. And anyway, it cuts to Barry and Wayne pull up on a bike, and Barry makes a comment. He says, "In the sexual jungle, you're a predator, you are."
Yeah.
And Wayne takes this as a great compliment. He says, "Well, I'll work alone if that's what you mean. And I don't go in mob-handed like the lads. They just booze it and talk about it. By the time they work up the nerve, they're too incapable." And then Barry's like, "Have you got no desire to form a permanent attachment?" And Wayne's clear. He's like, "No." He's like, "Well, I do." He's like, "I would like." He goes, "Oh, you will have to one day." He goes, "You will have to one day." He goes, "I got engaged once, and I think I still am. In fact, like
she's still got the ring, yeah.
Like an engagement's like an official thing that you need to have like a divorce. You need to get divorced from an engagement." And Wayne's like, "Well, what do you mean? Don't you know?" And he goes, "Well, we never broke it off officially, and she's still got the ring."
Ring. Yeah.
And so Wayne's like, "Well, do you see her?" "No." "You write to her?" "No." "Is she write to you?" "No." He's like, "Do you care?" "No, I don't like her very much." And Wayne's like, "What?" And he says, "Well, why did you get friggin' engaged then?" He says, "I think it was because her dad had a spare season ticket for the World Cup."
Wondering.
And he says, "Obviously that can make a young lad's heart sing." So they're, Barry is once again revealing his ineptitude when it comes to the matters of the heart.
Yeah.
So now they're at a bar, sitting having a drink, and Barry's starting to question himself. He's like, "Am I really a radish?" And Wayne's like, "Oh, don't have an identity crisis on me day off. Time is slipping by." And Barry's like, "Oh, well, if I'm in your way, I'll..." And Wayne's like, No. He says, "I said I'd fix you up, didn't I?" And Wayne's clearly underestimated the task at hand. Trying to get Barry to fix up. He says, "Just bide your time. There's no need to panic." He says, "You've just got to realize there's thousands of them out there. Birds are like the Chinese army.
Yeah.
Once you've jumped a few of them, you think that's it for a while, and then a whole new battalion comes over." I mean, what an analogy there. That's like the birds are like the Chinese army. And Barry says, "I only want one." And Wayne says, "That's where you and I differ. I want them all."
I want them all, yeah.
And Barry's like, "I've never been that ambitious myself." Anyway, there's 2 pretty young girls.
Oh, very attractive, yeah.
Very attractive young ladies arrive at the bar. And Wayne straight away notices and says, I think our prayers have been answered. And Barry's like, Barry hasn't seen them. He's got his back to them. He says, how? And he says, behind you. Just don't look now. Show some cool. And then Barry possibly does the least cool thing ever. And he's like trying to pretend, he's like, oh. So anyway, Barry clocks them and he says, very tasty. What do we do now? And Wayne puts it back on him. He says, not us, son, you.
You.
Like, what do you mean me? He goes, well, you're the one that's got to prove himself. Sooner or later, you've got to show what you're made of. Now, we've already had a flash. And he says, have we? He says, yeah, when they came in, a bit of eye contact. He says, don't go promising the world and no boring preamble, get straight to the point. Show your dazzling repartee. Barry's like, straight to the point, like. He's like, yes. Now, again, one of the famous lines, like, Wayne's obviously...
One of the best lines.
Yeah. Exactly. And Wayne's obviously, again, underestimated, Barry's ability to generate a bit of general conversation with the opposite sex. And Barry turns round and in his famous Wolverhampton drawl, he says... turns around to these girls, these two pretty girls at the bar, obviously German, and the first thing that comes out of his mouth is, do you want to come back to our hut? And Wayne, hears him and hangs his head in his hands. So they cut to the swimming pool.
The baths.
The baths. So the outside of the swimming pool is obviously in Hamburg. However, the inside of the swimming pool
is where?
It's your stomping ground, George, at Shepherd's Bush.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah.
So, I mean, you said that you used to go to the swimming pool in Marylebone.
Marylebone.
Yeah.
Seymour Baths.
Yeah, well, not too far down the road in Shepherd's Bush, that's where the swimming pool is. That's the location. So, Dennis and Dagmar. Now, Dagmar is a very attractive young lady.
Yeah.
However, did you notice one thing that wasn't so attractive?
No.
Oh,
yeah.
Hairy armpits, bro.
Oh, I've had that experience with a French girl one time. Oh.
Well, I remember when I was on the French exchange at school when I was like 12, and the French exchange's mother had big hairy armpits. I was like, oh, for Christ's sake.
Who was the singer in the 80s? Nina, wasn't it? 99 Red Balloons. Remember that? It was a huge hit.
Yeah.
She was absolutely beautiful, leather trousers. But as soon as this happened.
Oh, really?
Yeah. If you Google her, Nina, 99 Red Balloons.
No, I remember the song 99 Red Balloons.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't remember seeing her hairy armpits. But yeah.
Oh yeah.
Dagmar could definitely do with a wax.
Oh.
Anyway.
A no machine, what do you call them? Yeah.
Anyway, Dennis is very impressed. She's obviously got a fantastic body on her, quite athletic. And he says, "You're some swimmer." And she goes, "Yeah, at school I won some prizes." And Dennis, "Did you win prizes for English too?" And she says, "Of course." And he says, "Just as well, or would have nothing to talk about." And she says, "I will teach you German." And then Dennis, this is, the courtship, the flirtation. He says, "Well, I might have to be around for a long time for that." And she says, "So?" And he says, "Well, it suits me."
Yeah.
They're flirting, very, very strongly. And they're clearly both very, very taken aback with each other, and they firmly get involved in a new relationship. And so they're having a good time in the swimming pool, and then all of a sudden, boys from across the pool, and who is it but Oz, screaming and jumping into the pool. And Dennis, goes, "I don't believe it." And Dagmar goes under the water and swims off. And Nev pipes up, and he's like, "How, Den?" And he's like, "What made you come here?" And he goes, "We saw you with your towel and we worked it out." And Den's like, "Oh, terrific." And Oz is spitting water out and all, just totally uncouth and crass. And Oz comes over, "How, Dennis?" And then he sees Dagmar, and Oz, in his usual fashion, "Isn't that the tart from The Office?"
Yeah.
And Neville says, "Aye, hey, it's Dagmar." And now, I mean, how at this point the fucking penny doesn't drop?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Dennis sneaked off, and all of a sudden he's in the same place as Dagmar, but like there's no penny drop there. You know, they're both fucking oblivious, and Dennis says, "Oh, apparently she comes here a lot. Make these excuses. I just bumped into her. Pure coincidence." Anyway, Oz says, says to Neville, "How are you get yourself in? It's lovely." And Neville bombs into the water and screams, "It was a great idea." And Dennis just goes, "Aye," he's absolutely gutted. He thought he was going to get himself a nice bit of, private alone time with his new girl. And he's been, clearly interrupted. And Oz is, again, no penny drop there. "I can't understand why you never told us." And then he says to Nev, "Howie, I'll give you a race." And so Dennis's face is a picture, but he signals to Dagmar.
Phone, yeah.
So they cut back to the bar. They're all in the bar after they've been swimming. Oz and Neville at the bar, and Oz like, "I'll be stiff tomorrow after that swim." And Neville says, "You'll probably be sick and all you swallowed half the pool." Oz says, "You can't get chlorine poisoning." Well, I mean, yes, you can. And Neville says, "Aye," he winded him up. He says, "Aye, usually fatal." And then Oz says, "How fatal?" And he's like, "What do you mean? How fatal? Fatal's fatal, isn't it? You're dead, aren't you?"
Mm-hmm.
And you see Dennis is on the phone in the background, and obviously he's on the phone to Dagmar. And Oz says, "How long do you think I've got?" Neville says, "Oh, it'll be a matter of hours before you're writhing in agony, convulsions contorting your body." And Oz says, "Well, I better sup up." Now, I'm pretty sure he calls the barman Adolf.
Adolf, yeah, I heard that.
Says, "Another 5 pills there, Adolf." And anyway, I call him the barman Adolf. He just never fucking lets up, does he? You know what I mean? This is his barman's called Adolf. So Dennis comes back to the bar, and Neville, being a nosy bastard again, "Who are you calling?" "Just somebody." He's like, "Well, I gathered that." He says, "It's personal business, Neville, right?" And Neville's like, "I'm very sorry. I'm sure I didn't mean to pry." And Dennis says, "Even round here, it's possible to want some privacy. In fact, it's essential if you want to stay sane." Anyway, he's like, "Here, I've got you one in," passes the beer over to Dennis, who says, "Cheers." And Neville says, "That why you want to ship out?" And he says, "It is, aye." And Oz, "I can't understand it. Me, when we come here, we're all good mates." And, again, Oz just oblivious,
Yeah, what's wrong with this place?
That's it. Oz is happy to stay in the hut, happy to just drink with the lads. He's got no other desires or ambitions to improve his situation. Oz is happy as a pig in shit with what he's got. And that's it. Dennis says, the best way to stay mates is not to get on top of each other. And then Oz makes a joke, "There's nobody in the hut I want to get on top of." And then he says, "Whoa, mind you, I wouldn't." Oz, unbeknownst, puts his feet in it. "I wouldn't mind humping that Dagmar."
Big Bristols.
Aye. He says, "What?" And he says, "Well, she looked nice in that bikini, didn't she? Big Bristols, big strong thighs."
Strong thighs, yeah, I like that.
And obviously Dennis is getting the hump with Oz talking about his bird, but he can't see anything. But Neville notices the change in Dennis's demeanour, and he says, "What's up?" Then he says, "Nothing." He says, "Look, I've got to get off. I'm going into town." And Oz is like, "What's the matter with him? Like, he hasn't even drank his beer. He's in the right mood, isn't he?" It's nothing. And Oz, unbeknownst, he says, "Well, it's nothing that we said, is it?" Obviously, clearly it was everything that Oz just said, talking about Dagmar, but it's again, no one can say shit. So Oz takes his beer, and we cut back to Neville and Barry, Wayne and Barry on Barry's bike.
Yeah.
And they pull up at the shops. So Wayne's obviously, got the rage with Barry about performance, about him. So Wayne says, "Look, I'm going in here And Barry says, "You're dumping me, aren't you?" And he's like, "Look, I've got to get a few things." Barry's like, "I said I'm sorry, didn't I?" And Wayne repeats what he said. He goes, "Do you want to come back to our hut?" Like shaking his head like, "You fucking idiot." And Barry says, "I know I've got a lot to learn." And he says, "Well, look," he says, "we'll stick it out." He says, "But I've got to get some things. Come pick me up in 20 minutes. So he sends Barry. And so, again, you know, I mean, as we mentioned last week, so last week's episode was fairly serious in places. You know, Neville getting arrested and charged with, you know, and the bird, you know, having all her face bashed up and everything like that. It was a fairly serious episode. Well, now on the other side of the coin, this episode's starting to get a little bit slapstick. You know, like how much, like, you know, you couldn't fucking make it.
People running into each other and
exactly. So, you know, Dagmar's now waiting on the corner. So, you know, they tried to see each other in the swimming pool, and Neville and Oz turned up, and now Dagmar's waiting on the corner for Dennis. They're going to try and have an afternoon or an evening together. And, you know, Barry pulls up on his bike and he's like, "Hello again, small world, isn't it?" And Dagmar's like, "Oh, for fuck's sake." I think the look on her face, she's like, "Oh, fuck me. It's fucking him again." And, you know, so she's trying to be, you know, polite but abrupt. She goes, "Yes, it seems so." And Barry apologizes for Wayne. He says, "I'm sorry if my friend was a bit forward. He doesn't mean anything. It's just his way." And Dagmar's like just looking around, like basically, like, you know, trying to give Barry the impression, you know, basically telling him to fuck off without telling him to fuck off.
But he's not getting the message.
Yeah, well, but Barry says, "You're waiting for a friend then?" And he says, and she says, "Yes." And then Dennis pulls up over the road in a taxi, and Dennis sees Barry, and he's like, "Oh, for fuck's sake," you know. He's like, "Oh." Anyway, he tells the taxi to drive on, and then Barry realizes, he says, "I better be off." And Dagmar goes, "Good." I mean, goodbye. And then Barry's ta-ra for a bit. So Dennis
ta-ra for a bit.
Ta-ra for a bit. And then so Dennis now runs up and he's like, quick, get in. Not looking happy. And Dagmar says, "Do you think your friends are following us?" And Dennis says, "What was Barry doing here? I don't know. Just a coincidence." And Dennis says, "Look, I did warn you." And Dagmar says, "You know, maybe not try to keep it a secret." Like she, you know, Dagmar is clearly jumping in this relationship with both feet, and she is happy to tell.
She doesn't seem worried, if anyone knows.
Like, she goes, "Look, just tell everyone I'm being with Dagmar and it's none of your business." And Dennis says, "No, I need something that's just mine, now to do with them. And it's also for you." And she's like, "What, for me?" And he says, "Yes, I don't want you to be the object of their, you know, I don't want you to hear, I don't want to hear them talking about you where they talk about other women." And she says, "I don't care." And very seriously, Dennis says, "I do." So again, this is, you know, Dennis, you know, very, you know, showing that he's very committed to Dagmar. So they cut back to Barry to Barry and Wayne on the bike, taxi at the lights, and their bike pulls up. And Wayne looks around, and there is a couple of Swedish hotties. They now we're talking a couple of Swedish hotties
in full uniform,
in their trolley dolly uniform. And Wayne says, "There is a God, Barry, cop them." And Barry says, "Oh my goodness, air hostesses." And Wayne says, "Stewardesses, they call themselves now." And so Wayne, straight away, not shy, like fair play to him, knocks on the window. "Do you speak English?" "Yes, I thought you would. Where are you from?" "We're from Sweden." "Swedish, something about your flawless complexion told me that." So Wayne straight in, laying it on thick. And she says, "Yes, what do you want?" And he says, "Me and my chauffeur, strangers in a foreign land, much like yourself, and we were feeling depressed. But then we caught a glimpse of you two and you lifted our hearts." Like there's a chat up line, Wayne, look at that. Like again, you know, laying it on thick. And the Swedish girl's like, "What?" And she goes, "You made us feel glad."
And all over.
"I'm sure they did, Wayne." And Barry's like, "What's happening? Anyway, Wayne says, "It's hard to tell we're dealing with the Swedish mentality, unpredictable at best of times. So obviously the two Swedish girls talk and they say, we are very flattered that you feel this way. And then just as they're getting this, the Swedish like, oh, we're very flattered, they're giving them the come on, and then the taxi drives off. Barry panics and Barry stalls his motorbike. Well, fucking hell, Wayne loses the plot. The lights are changing. Anyway, so Wayne's given Barry, both barrels there, telling them to hurry up, etc. Anyway, they get going and they give chase. And Wayne says, if you lose them, I'll hang for you, Barry. Barry thinks he's doing something right, but actually, an absolute mistake. Barry says he's going to take a shortcut.
Through the park.
Yeah, starts driving across the park, and he drives his motorbike into a big pond, pondy type, big puddle pond. And, the bike obviously goes far too deep into the water, stalls the bike, and covers them both in mud. But they do see the Swedish air hostesses getting out of the taxi outside the hotel, so they know where they are. And Wayne says, see, look, overnight stop. Barry says, shall we go in? He says, go in. He says, have you seen the state of us? We look like motocross riders. Barry says, we better go back and clean up. And Wayne says, we shall return. So Wayne and Barry have got their plan. And so they go back to the hut. Dennis is putting on a brand new shirt and he's whistling away. He's, again, obviously in a very, very good mood. So he's obviously met up with Dagmar and they've discussed possibilities and they've decided that they're gonna, maybe have an evening together in the hotel. So
nice meal. Yeah,
Dennis is going back to get his stuff together to go and meet Dagmar at the hotel. And Neville comments, you seem a bit more cheery. And Dennis says, what's that, Neville? And Neville says, you seem in a better mood. And he said, I didn't realise I was in a bad one. And he said, well, you've hardly been life and soul the last few days. You've been very distant. He says, I'm sorry. And Neville thinks that, he can read him like a book. Neville thinks he knows what's going on. He says, it's okay, Dennis, I understand. It's because of Vera and the divorce. I've been thinking, and he says, can I talk to you personally, like? And Dennis says, are you going to tell me something that my friends won't? And he says, I know where you're at. I know what I know, and you know what I think will be best for you. And Dennis is obviously, what's that? And he says, oh, woman.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, woman. He says, aye, not just a strump, like, a nice woman. Someone you can
communicate,
share common interests. And Dennis makes a joke. He says, what, a woman Britty? And he says, why won't you take me seriously? I'm saying this out of friendship for you. You've helped me out when I was depressed. And, Dennis realizes, that he's, he's coming from a genuine place of concern. He says, sorry, Nev. And he says, it isn't if I haven't given it any thought. And Dennis says, obviously. And he says, I think you should leave your past behind, find yourself a nice girl over here. You're still a young man, Dennis. So, Neville, we worked out, is what, 25? And so Dennis is, he's got 2 kids, but they're not, they're around the sort of 10 years old mark. So, Dennis has got to only be, mid-30s at the late, he's like early mid-30s, something like that. So it's not like he's exactly, over the hill or anything like that.
No.
But yeah, he says that you're still a young man, Dennis. Anyway, Dennis is, starts to agree with him and he says, aye, bunny lad. You probably hit the nail on the head. And Neville's like, oh, aye, he goes, well, what are mates for? And Dennis is just walking out the door of the hut and he turns back to Neville and he says, well, Neville, he says, what would it be if I already had?
Did you notice when he walks out what he doesn't have?
No, what?
He doesn't have the suitcase.
Oh, he doesn't have his suitcase. Another continuity error there.
Yeah.
So, and he says, what if I've already found a woman? And Neville says, come on, I know you too well. So
yeah.
anyway, so then Barry and Wayne rush into the hut, and they're covered in mud. And Neville's like, "How do you get in that state?" And Wayne says, "Pulling." And Barry's fucking super excited. He's like, "Swedish girls, Nev, Swedish girls." The stewardesses need to say more. And the term they prefer is flight attendant. Stewardesses is sexist. Anyway, so this is Barry again, trying to be as politically correct as possible. And Wayne's like, "Never mind the terminology, find a clean shirt." Nev says, "Where are you meeting them?" And then Barry says, "It's not a date." He reveals, he says, "It's not a date exactly. We're meeting them at the Intercontinental. We're going to steam right in." And then Wayne's he says, "Which cologne will send your average into a frenzy?" So, they cut to the hotel. Now they cut to the hotel, and Dennis and Dagmar, and Dennis is recounting the story of what Neville said, and he said, then he said, "Come on, Dennis, I know you too well." So he's telling her the story, and then Dagmar says, "So they don't see you as a woman chaser?" And he says, "Well, I'm not, or maybe I should say I didn't used to be." And he says, "I'm making up for it in my old age." And Dagmar says, "You deserve it, and me too." Then, it still feels a bit strange. "You, me, hotel." And she says, "Very nice hotel. You and I are very nice people." And then Den, moves in, basically tries to get a bit fresh. And she's like, "Look, I need to take a shower and you need to reserve the table and I'll get some drinks." So back to the bar. Oz is on the pinball machine again with a pinball, and Neville arrives, and they start having a chat about what's going on. And Neville interrupts Oz, and he says, "Quiet, I've got a big score coming." And Neville starts telling them about Wayne and Barry just pulled 2 Swedish air hostesses, and Oz looks up. He's like, "Air hostesses?" So not to distract him from his game, and he loses the game of pinball. Neville says, "Aye, Swedish." And Oz says, "Oh, now he's lost the game." He says, "We might as well get a beer." And Nev says, I can understand Wayne, but Barry." And Oz once again calls the barman Adolf.
Adolf, yeah.
He's like, "2 bottles of pills, please, Adolf." And he says, "Oh, the jammy Arabs." Remember, that was a proper saying, wasn't it? Back in
Yeah.
And Neville explains, he says, "Look, they haven't exactly nailed it, but they know where they're stopping at the Intercontinental, so they're going to go around on the off chance." And Oz says, "It's hardly guaranteed, is it?" And Neville says they'll probably hang around the bar and then come back and spin a tale. And then Oz, Oz has a bit of a light bulb moment, and he's like, "Right."
Well, why he wants to mess them up? I mean, I don't know. But...
Yeah, it just is what it is,
Yeah.
So he goes, "Oh, that's that." He goes, "Right." He says, "Hang on a minute." Then he says, "You reckon they'll just be sat in the bar on the off chance waiting?" And Neville says, "I." He says, "Right, let's get them. Let's set them up." And he says, "How?" He goes, "A stroke I pulled in a hotel in Sheffield once." Says it was the night before Newcastle played Burnley in the semis. Now, what he's actually referring to was actually a real game. Did you know that?
All right, yeah.
Yeah, so it was the semi-final of the FA Cup, and Newcastle played Burnley at Hillsborough, and Newcastle won, and then went on to, I think it was, they lost to Liverpool in the final. But yeah, what he's referring to was actually a real game of football. And he says, "Aye, what a game. Supermax scored 2, and on the way back was smashed up a little chef on the A1. Wellerby." And again, that was because it was actually in Sheffield where Jimmy Neal got arrested, and
oh, right, yeah.
So that's a bit of an echo of Jimmy Neal's real life there. And Neville says, "Never mind that. What was the stunt?" And Oz says, "Follow me." So Barry and Wayne, they're in the hotel, they're getting drinks. And Wayne pretends they're residents and, gives the guy a good tip. And Barry says, "What did you say? We're residents. We're not staying here." And Wayne, thinking ahead, he says, "Well, we could be if things work out." Barry says, "We don't look like residents, especially not you with your haircut and your earring." Like as if, there's, people that stay in hotels have a certain look. And then Wayne says they might think we're roadies. And he's like, roadies, like there's no, like as if there's a band staying there. And Barry says, fat chance. And he says, look, let's have a drink. So then it cuts to Oz, and Oz plays his card. So Oz in the bar rings the hotel and leaves a fake message. He says, I want to leave a message for Mr. Norris. Hey, Norris.
Hey, Norris, yeah.
Can you tell him that he's wanted urgently in room 612, the infamous 612? And obviously Neville realizes what's going on, and the smile appears over Neville's face, and Oz puts the phone down. It was like, that'll wind them up. And then straight away it cuts back, and there's a dude walking around the hotel with a sign saying, Hey, Norris. And
but it doesn't even seem to cross Wayne's mind that how do they know my name?
Exactly. Exactly.
He's so excited about getting up to the room.
Well, I just wrote in my notes, I just wrote in brackets, idiot.
Yeah.
So like I said, there's a dude with a sign saying he wants Hey, Norris, and he picks the phone up and he says, Hey, Norris here. And the receptionist says, whoever's given him the message says, you're wanted urgently in room 612. And like I say, at no point does he go,
yeah, there's no way.
These girls be named. Nobody knows we're here. He's just that blinded by the fact that he wants to get his leg over, that he's not thinking logically about the situation.
Yeah.
Barry questioned, and Barry
Barry.
So they head off to the lift, and and the receptionist notes that they're heading to the lift and tells the manager.
Yeah.
So they're in the lift, and Barry questions. Barry says, how did they know we were here? And Wayne just, they must have clocked us. They must have seen us come in. Who cares? They're up there eagerly awaiting. And Wayne thinks, from this brief conversation that he had with him in the taxi, through a taxi window, they now know his name and they're inviting him up for a bungalow.
His second name.
I mean, crazy. Anyway, Barry's concerned about his look, and he says, do I look all right? He says, did you have to wear that jacket? And Barry's like, don't undermine my confidence, not now, for Christ's sake. And Wayne says, you look adorable, son, adorable. And then he starts singing Strangers in the Night. And so the lift opens, they're on the 6th floor, and they're walking down the corridor, counting off the rooms, 602, 604, that's the odd, 606. Yeah. And so, it cuts from Wayne and Barry in the corridor to the inside of the room, and Dennis and Dagmar. And he says, and Dagmar says, I'll be finished soon. And he says, oh, no rush, pet. Puts on a bit of splasher all over.
Yeah.
And Dennis comments, where the hell is the bloody room service? And he ordered them drinks ages ago. So Dennis goes to see if he can see the room service, and he opens the door, and lo and behold, the door, and Barry and Wayne are right there. And the look on Dennis's face, like the look, he's
again.
Like a look of surprise, then crossed with a look of rage, and Dennis has got the rage. And then it shows the hotel manager is on the hunt. So Den rushes into the room and shouts at Dagmar, Dagmar, stay in the bathroom. Yeah. Don't come out. And he throws her suitcase in. He opens the bathroom door, throws in her suitcase, and shuts. And Barry's like, hello, Den, hello, what are you doing? And Wayne's like, what are you doing here? So Den's like, I fancied a weekend on my own, I thought I'd check into a hotel. And Barry said, that's a strange thing to do. And Dennis is like, well, not really. It's warm and comfortable, and I've got my own bathroom, and it's a change from the hut. And then the manager of the hotel approaches and starts speaking in German. And Wayne obviously realizes that the manager of the hotel is on them. He's following them around, and he says, get us out of this den, bail us out. So Wayne, fronts up the manager. What's the problem, Squire? We're visiting a friend, ain't we? And the manager says, oh, these gentlemen are with you. And Dennis, very sheepishly goes, yeah. And the manager says, I'm sorry. And they all go into the room. And so, Barry, very quickly says, nice room, Den. And he sits down and starts to make himself at home. you know. And he's like,
doesn't Barry say the room's very well appointed?
Yeah, very well appointed. And then Wayne says, you know what, Den, you've got a point. You have a bit of luxury at a weekend, bit of privacy. And he mentions the word privacy, and Dennis loses it. He goes, there's a fat chance with you two here. What are you two doing in this hotel? And then obviously Wayne begins to tell a story about, we're here to get with the stewardesses. Right, darlings, they are. And Barry says, again, Barry's like, Swedish. And Wayne says, they're staying here 3 doors down. They paged us, and we're about to do the business. Like Wayne's, like there's not a doubt in Wayne's mind that behind that door there's 2 Swedish birds ready to have sex with him. Yeah. Like that just, there's not a doubt. Like he's like such tunnel vision. Yeah, the confidence is ridiculous. And he says, but Barry, and then Barry goes on the bed, and like Barry's lying back on the bed. Now all of a sudden, Barry is like, Mr. Smooth. Barry's gone from, gone from saying, do you want to come back to our hut? To now he's lying back on the bed, like, talking about having sex with the Swedish air stewardess. And he says, I shouldn't think it would happen straight off, Wayne. I should imagine we'll have to break the ice and have a few drinks and a bit of charm. Dennis says, well, I wouldn't want to keep the ladies waiting if I was you. And Wayne says, well, look, wait until that nosy Eric pisses off. And he says, he says, yeah, Den, why don't you come with us, eh? They're bound to have a couple of mates. All the air crew stay here. The place, they'll be crawling with uniformed crumpet. And Dennis says, look, I've told you. I want time on me jack. And Wayne said, you feeling a bit depressed, are you? He says, no, I just want to have I just want to sort a few things out. And Barry says, you need your own space, as they say. And Dennis is like, I wouldn't mind, Barry, yes. They're just fucking, like, go so far over their head. And like Dennis is being as direct as he possibly can. He's like, look, you may as well look, man, fuck off.
Push off, yeah.
Wayne basically says, you can't mean to tell me you'd rather sit here in a lonely hotel room watching poxy German telly than go down the road and strump some Nordic nymphomaniac. Dennis says, look, lads, the course must be clear by now. Why don't you just push off and leave me alone? And again, you can't get more direct than And eventually, obviously, I think the penny's dropping that he wants them out. Suit yourself, this offer will not be repeated. And Barry says, Den obviously wishes to be alone. And Den shouts, bingo! Come in at last. And he opens the door. So, as he opens the door, the room service waitress turns up with the drinks.
Yeah.
So, who is this waitress, George?
Jenny Eclair.
Yes, so Jenny Eclair, who, as you said, was quite a sort.
Yeah, she looked lovely, yeah.
And so this is Jenny Eclair's first ever appearance on the TV as this extra. Now, if you go onto our IMDb, she's got a few, things that she's done as an actress, but she's got literally hundreds and hundreds of things that she's done, like as herself. So she's been on Loose Women, every game show, the celebrity game shows, Pointless Celebrities, this, that, and the other. She was even on I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, and she's been on this, and like all the, and because of that, she's done all the reality shows. I mean, she's quite a, quite a well-known, personality. And this was her very, very first taste of. And
she's playing a German as well.
And she does quite well. And then, so she comes in with the drinks, and automatically, like Wayne and Barry, like start basically lusting after her. They're like, oh, look at this. And the waitress, basically says in German, sign here, and Den signs, and then Barry sees the 2 drinks and laughs. And then their sort of penny drops, and Wayne says, hey, you're a sly one. He's got, what is it he says? He's got
assignation.
He's got another party coming. And they go, hey. And like Barry's like, hey. And he says, and then Den fucking loses it. He's like, why don't you two just bugger off, man? And Wayne's like, yeah, all right, but come on, tell us. Like, Wayne's desperate for the gossip. And he says, do you mind? And then Wayne, shot in the dark, but hits the bullet.
Yeah, nail on the head.
It's not that Dagmar, is it? And then the camera angle, it cuts to the camera, and the camera's directly over looking down into the bathroom, and Dagmar's sitting on the toilet, and she's like, oh,
listening to everything.
And yeah, listening to everything. He says, why would it be her? And Wayne says, well, she seems to like you. It's the old welcome mat for you when you come in the office. Cold shoulder for the rest of us.
Yeah.
And then Barry grasses him up. He says, Wayne tried it on this morning, but there was nothing doing. And Wayne's like, I did not try it on. I was just being conversational. And Den says, for once and for all, I'm not expecting anybody, right? I want a night in on me own, right? I've ordered 2 drinks to save bringing up room service. You're the pair that's on the pull, so I'd suggest you get on with it before the Swedish birds go off the boil, right? And Wayne's like, yeah, all right, no offense, Square. And he says, it's only a bit of fun, Den. And Den's like, oh, it's no offense. Anyway, and then Barry,
words of wisdom.
Barry puts his even bigger foot and his even bigger mouth.
Right outside the bathroom door.
Exactly. He says, we know that you wouldn't be on the pull because we know how you feel about your Vera. And, Dennis is just like, oh, for fuck's sake, man. The look on his face, he's just like, oh, could this actually get any worse? And again, this is the slapstick, situational comedy from, like I say, from the seriousness of the last episode to the comedy of this episode. It's, polar opposites. And again, it shines, looks down on Dagmar sat on the toilet. And then runs over and picks up the drink. And it's like either gin or vodka or whatever. And he starts drinking the neat spirit.
Yeah.
Like, oh, fuck. And then he pours a bit of tonic in and says, you can come out now. So Dagmar comes out and she's got a fairly stern look on her face. And he says, I suppose you heard all that? And she says, of course. And he says, well, what can I say? And he says, there's a drink there. And how did they know about us? And he says, they didn't. And they mentioned my name. And it was a shot in the dark. And he says, you said you didn't want them to know about us. And he says, they didn't. I suppose you don't believe me. I suppose you picture us all in the hut boasting about our sexual conquests and confiding our fantasies. I don't blame you. That's what it's like most of the time. And she says, I can imagine. She says, Wayne's remark about you was sheer speculation. It's just a coincidence. And she says, another one. And it's getting beyond a joke now, the coincidences.
A farce.
and anyway, so Dagmar looks pissed. And there's a big pause in the conversation. And then she says, she drops the bomb. She goes, who is
Vera?
So Dennis is like, look, she's me wife. And Dagmar says, oh. And Dennis says, look, should we just call it a day? Dennis has got to the point where he thinks he's blown it, basically, or he thinks they've blown it for him.
Yeah.
He says, shall we just call it a day? Shall we forget about it? And Dagmar Dagmar realizes, and she says, look, I came here because I wanted to be with you and I still want to be with you. And Dennis says, thanks. And Dagmar says, come here. Smiles and says, come here. So they go in, I think they're going to have a bit of an intimate time together there.
Yeah.
And then it cuts. And Barry and Wayne are furiously knocking on the door of room 612. And Barry's like, you've knocked long enough. There's no one here. And Wayne's looking through the keyhole or the peephole. And he says, well, they must be in the shower or something.
Together?
I mean, like, Swedish, ain't they? Very liberated, you Swede son. So Barry's like, oh, my cousin Norma. And then Barry tells a story. Smooth, my cousin Norma's very liberated, Yeah, she's always walking around the house stark naked. And I said to her, this is a council house just outside Wolverhampton. I said, you'd lose this house flaunting yourself the way you do.
There's another shot of Jenny Eclair, isn't there? She sees them, yeah.
Well, that's it. So she grasses them up, basically. So she's obviously taken more room service and she sees Barry and Wayne banging on the door. And Barry's continuing his story, but he's like, Eric, that's her husband. He don't know about it because he works nights. And then Wayne's like, shit, I can hear something there. And there, Barry's like, they're in there. Like I say, that Jenny Eclair sees them and obviously goes off to tell. So obviously it cuts to the room, and obviously inside the room is definitely not a pair of Swedish flight attendants.
The guy looks like a 70s porn star, doesn't he?
Yeah, good. It is good. So yeah, there's a German couple in there, and they're banging on the door, and obviously they're having a conversation in German, and I'm assuming they're going, "Who's that? You know, what's going on? You know."
Did you notice the song that was playing? There's a song playing.
I didn't know. No, what's that?
It was a group called PhD. I Won't Let You Down, and that's the singer is Jim Diamond.
Well, fucking George, your knowledge of 80s music, because you used to work in HMV, didn't you?
10 years, yeah.
Yeah. So and what was it? Was it about this time you were working there? When did you work there?
88 to 98.
All right, well, there you go. So I would assume that your music knowledge is quite extensive.
Yeah. Well, it's one of my favourite songs, but yeah.
Well, there you go. So obviously, like I say, so the German man and the woman, they're having a conversation. Anyway, the German woman opens up the door, and Wayne's like, "It's about time to. What you been doing? Putting your face on." The German woman's like, "Va, like speaking German, was, like, what you doing? Who are you? What do you want?" And Wayne says, "Speak English, darling. It's us. Like, it's us. It's us. We've arrived. What have you been waiting for?"
He's just seen the blonde hair. He thinks, right, Swedish, yeah.
Yeah. So obviously they burst into the room, and Barry's like, "Wayne, are you sure that's them?" And he's like, "Of course it is. They just look different out of uniform." And obviously the German man and the German woman are like, "What are you doing?" Like, you know, they're speaking German, but I'm assuming they're going, "What you doing? What you doing?" And then Wayne, like, automatically offended. He's like, "Oh, we got company, have we? What's the matter, darling? We ain't enough for you girls, eh?" And the German man and woman are like speaking German again, and Barry's realizing that there's something not right. And he says, "Are you sure this is room 612? And the German man starts getting his wallet out.
Yeah.
And Wayne says, "Hey, listen, mate, you don't have to pay for it. Pay us for it, you know." And Barry's realized what's going on. And he says, and Wayne's like, "Oh, what's going on here? I mean, we come up here for an innocent liaison. I find myself in some depraved situation with some geezer flashing the old reddies." Barry's like, "Wayne," and he's like, "What is he, a blimmer or something?" I mean, like, maybe we should have looked that up on the Urban Dictionary. I don't know what a blimmer is, but it's maybe a cook. I don't know. That's what an 80s version of a cook. I don't know. But, and he says, "And where's your mate?" And Barry's like, "Look," and he says, Wayne, he says, "They think that we're muggers." What? He says, we're in the wrong room. They think we're muggers. And Wayne's like, the penny drops, and he's fucking no. So they run off. They make a break for it. They run down the corridor and then run down the stairs.
Fire stairs, it looks like. Yeah.
You see the reception. The Germans are obviously making a complaint, and then the manager runs to the lift. And Wayne and Barry find themselves in, he says, "Oh, don't go." Wayne says, "Don't go down there. They'll catch us on the ground floor." So they go on the first floor toilet, and they start climbing out the window. And so Barry's like, "You've obviously had more experience of this kind of thing than I have." And he says to Wayne, "I tell you one thing, I'm not going on the pull with you again."
You're a jinx.
Wayne's like, "Yeah, the feeling's mutual, you're a jinx." And so they're stuck. I mean, it looks like quite a jump, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not just a, it's like, from the edge of like a wall or whatever. I mean, it looks like it could be a 20-foot drop.
Yeah.
They're certainly right. Barry's certainly right to be a bit, anxious about the potential jump. And And he said, and Wayne, you know, and Wayne just,
As he says, I think Wayne's probably done it before.
yeah, well, Wayne just looks down and goes, "You ready?" And he goes, "What do you mean, ready? I'll break me bleeding leg." And Wayne says, "Don't be daft, we're fit enough." And Barry goes, We're not. We might have been fit enough if we've gone jogging or swimming with Neville, but as you so despise physical exercise, he was leaving out, Barry, will you? It's not much of a jump. And Barry says, "No, not for the SAS, and I don't mean the friggin' airline." And Wayne says, "Come on, it's like Butch and Sundance." Barry says, "Aye, we know what happened to them." And then they take, they hold hands. And so they take a run up to the edge and they actually jump. And yeah, I mean, like I say, you know, bit of a dangerous thing. So anyway, so you know, Dennis and Dagmar are leaving the room. They've sorted out the differences.
Yeah.
And you know, they're on their way to dinner and they pass room 612 and Dennis says, you know, they're ensconced in there. Well, you and me are having a quiet dinner, candle lit with several bottles of wine, and we'll put the events of the past firmly behind us, eh? And he gives her a kiss. Drawn the line. It's over and done with. They're they're on, like, you know, all of the bullshit, all of the coincidences, all of the like at the wrong time. It's over. And like what they want is they want their lovely night, and they're about to go and have it. And they're out of the woods and they're on the way down. And then the hotel manager comes out.
One moment, please.
1 moment, please. And Dennis said, "What can I do?" He goes, "Your friends that were here earlier." He's like, "What about them?" He goes, "You must know who they are." And he says, "Why?" And he says, "Come to the manager's office, please." And again, you know, like 2 seconds ago, Dennis was like, "It's all over and done with. Put all that behind us." And then all of a sudden he's like, he's got the rage on again, looks pissed. So next morning, taxi's dropping off Dennis back at the hut. And Neville is discussing, says, you know, "Dennis stopped out all night there, must have taken my advice." He says, "What advice was that then?" And he says, "I told him to have a bit of a fling." So Dennis enters the hut and not a happy camper. Anyway, so, you know, Neville says, you know, "Morning, Dennis, and where have you been, eh?" Like trying to make a joke of it. Or maybe we shouldn't ask. And Dennis, "Aye, maybe you shouldn't."
His assignation.
Yeah, not that it'd make any difference. Like, I mean, news spreads faster than the playground here. He says, "What's the problem?" And he points to Wayne and Barry and he says, "Well, ask Abbott and Costello."
Costello. Yeah.
And Wayne says, "Come on, Den, we was all after the same thing last night, weren't we? And I'd say you were a bit more successful than what we was, eh?" And Barry's like, "Look at my ankle, it's all puffed up." And Dennis whacks Barry's ankle and like Barry winces out of pain. He says, "I know all about you two, man. I spent an hour in the manager's office explaining who my guests were." And Barry's like, "Oh, do you mean there were repercussions?" And he says, "Aye, you could say that, Barry. I mean, it was you two who terrorized some innocent couple, wasn't it?" And Wayne's like, "You didn't finger us, did you?" And he says, No, I said you were two blokes I'd met in the bar." And he points his finger at Wayne and he says, "But in future," he says, "you just stay out of my life."
My life.
And so he grabs, like, you know, he's back. He grabs his wash bag and his towel, and he obviously starts heading for the amenities hut. Anyway, and Neville, you know, says, like, turns out to him and says, "Is there something you two haven't told me?" Obviously, they, you know, Wayne and Barry kept their little escapade to themselves. They didn't tell anyone. So, as always, Moxie's in the toilet, and Oz is banging on the door, kicking the door. "How are Moxie, man? Hurry yourself up. The amount of time you spend in there, I'm surprised you don't move in." And Moxie's like, "I'm not doing it for pleasure. It's the bloody sauerkraut. It's the sauerkraut." Anyway, so I was like, "How, Den?" And Dennis, again, somebody in there kicks the door. And he says, "Aye, Moxie, put your name down for about Tuesday." And Dennis is just like, "Oh, I've got to get out of here, man." And I was like, "What's the matter?" Like, he says, "Well, them two pricks, Barry and Wayne,
destroyed my weekend." Yeah.
And then Oz, so So Oz, unbeknownst, he says, "Aye, well, I didn't do their weekend much good, me like." And he says, "Dennis," and he says, "How's that?" And he says, "Well, I'll tell you about it. This will cheer you up."
You don't hear it, but you know what he's saying.
No, but that's it. Yeah. So it cuts to the outside of the hut, and you hear Dennis did what? So he's obviously gone for Oz, and taking his frustrations out on Oz, and he's chasing Oz up towards the hut in the mud, and he's like, "Dennis, what's got into you, man?" And he's like, obviously, it's all come out. And then, Moxie flushes the toilet. And he sticks his head, he goes, it's free now.
Eventually, yeah.
It's in the toilet. And that is the end of the episode. So, yeah, what like I say, a little bit more light comic relief compared to last week.
It's one of my favourites, actually, that episode. I really,
yeah. Well, like I say, between that one and the one in the curry house, like I say, one of my particular favourites. But yeah, so we're over halfway. We're on the downward slope now for series 1. And so obviously the credits, Dagmar got a credit, the German couple were given a credit, the floor clerk. So I would assume floor clerk, that was probably the hotel manager. Then, like you said, the room service waitress. But so Jenny Eclair, she was actually called Jenny Claire Hargreaves. So Jenny Eclair is a stage name. And as always, the barman from the bar was given a credit. So yes, so that's it for Series 1, Episode 7, Private Lives. And we will be back next week, breaking down and discussing Episode 8. And if memory serves me correctly, I believe it is The Fugitive, which is... including a very famous person as well. Exactly, I think it's Ray Winston. So
that's it.
I did send Ray Winston a message on Instagram asking if he wanted to be on the podcast. Hasn't replied yet. The cheeky bastard.
I'm sure we'll get round to it.
You'd think you would have nothing better to do, would you? Anyway, as always, so if you have any comments or suggestions about the podcast, like I say, praise or abuse, we don't mind. Please do email us on aufwiedersehenagain@gmail.com. That's aufwiedersehenagain@gmail.com. We are available on social media, Instagram @Auf Wiedersehen Again Podcast. Please do follow the Instagram page, Twitter @Auf Again. That's please do follow the Twitter. Facebook, please do like, follow, and share the Facebook page, Auf Wiedersehen Again Podcast. And YouTube, please do subscribe to the YouTube channel, Auf Wiedersehen Again Podcast, and click that bell. And if you want to listen in the car or wherever, we are on all good podcast platforms, SoundCloud, Spotify, iTunes, Anchor, Google Podcasts, Breaker, and many more. And new episodes are released every Friday at 10 a.m. And the theme music is composed and performed by Lee Dosky, the guitar man. And so please do like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And remember, we are sponsored by Top Gun Tattooing, number 12, the Harris Arcade in Reading. That's www.topguntattoo.co.uk, 01189 968 667. 20% discount of any tattoo by speaking to Zach with the code word Hadaway and Shiteman. And remember, a free Neville and Lottie tattoo for every single reader. I keep saying reader, listener. And next week we will be, and remember that, so next week we'll be announcing the new giveaway competition of the Jimmy Nail book. So that's it for this week, episode 7. So good work there, George. And as always, till next week, Auf Wiedersehen Pet.
Oh, yeah, man. All out of options, nothing to choose. I've been out on Netflix, I'm sick of the news. I'd sign up to Sky, but